Thank you, Bev. Wonderful to see you. Happy New Year. I know I don't want to get too far ahead of myself because the pre-camp hasn't even arrived yet, but what are sort of the expectations for you and the squad heading into She Believes? You start with the Americans. I was at that match at Eden Park and they look close to 100%. Rose Lavelle's looking like one of the best players on the entire planet. And you start with them and there's always that extra pressure with the US with the inherent rivalry, but three tough opponents, which is what you want. Where are expectations knowing there are bigger fish to fry this year?
Yeah, if I go back to this time last year, we were at the Arnold Clark Cup and we were one goal away from winning it. I know we lost to Spain, but we pushed and pushed and pushed. I think my expectations don't change around this group against top 10 teams. You look at our last few games against the US, it's been a penalty that arguably shouldn't have been a penalty in the Olympics. It comes to fine margins, and I think that's what I'd expect of this tournament to be. You look at the conceding in the 93rd plus minute against Brazil on a set play due to, substitution challenges and things. That it always comes to those little fine margins. And I think that's what I think this tournament will be. I'm hoping it'll be fine margins, and on our day, we can push and get the results that we need to. But I think what I'll be more doing is post that tournament, really reviewing, what are the little things now? Because it is that point, you've only got an April camp and then you're into a preparation camp. You hardly have any time left. And so it's that fine tuning that we're going to need to do. And I think for me, start now, shape my mind to who are the 23, what are the tiny tweaks into some of the new game models and our old game models. I think it'll be those little things. It's just a good staging post to help us kick on for the rest of the year.
Thank you. And my follow-up on that, just you speak about partnerships earlier, and I know that's been an important piece of the build-up to this World Cup, but with the shape that this team is sort of evolving into, the more that 4-2-3-1, you're missing, in theory, your top choice too, with both Julia and Jessie out of the team. And I know you've seen other players in those positions, but how do you manage those partnerships that you're trying to see in a tournament like this when you're missing some obvious starters for a World Cup?
Yeah, well, I think obviously the likes of a Julia Jessie for the She Believes will be, obvious choices to be in. So I think, come the actual tournament, we'll have our full roster. It's just the pre-camp where those players don't get an extra few 2-3 training sessions. So I think it'll be a big focus for the tournament is partnerships, different styles of opponents, who's best suited to play a Japan versus a US. And these are all the sorts of questions that we're asking. And then how, over the Christmas period, did a lot of work on our opponents for the World Cup. What does a Japan look like in terms of set plays to an Ireland, as an example? So trying to get dual outcomes now for the future so that we can learn where we're at and where we need to get to.
Hey there, Bev. I just wanted to go back to something that you mentioned about kind of the wear and tear on the players' bodies and all the games and stuff that they're playing. Last month, FIFA declined the request to have 26 player rosters for the World Cup. Just to get your thoughts on that, and do you feel that's the end of it, or do you think there is still a chance you could get 26 player rosters?
Yeah, it's a great question. To be honest, at the draw, we had a big coaches meeting and, the 23 versus 26 was raised. I felt a majority in that setting who were pro 26, particularly you can imagine the European nations where they've just had a Euros and a lot of the injuries that are happening, and then received the notification from FIFA over the telephone that it would just be 23. I think for me, particularly, again, I can only talk to the lack of youth activity that we had. My plan, if we got 26, was to invest in 2024 players that might be called upon and really develop them and give them a massive experience, but also in the likes of injuries and burnout that we've had. I think it also covers you in that sense. Now you're down to your 23, someone gets injured after the first game and your squad starts to be depleted. So if you're asking me my opinion, I would absolutely be in favour of 26. I think we've got the depth to do it. It would have developed future players, but I don't know if that will change. I get the sense that is the reason. I think the big rationale from FIFA was that obviously the Men's World Cup was in the middle of a season, and so you didn't get a thorough preparation camp, whereas in the summer months, I believe the men's will go back to 2023, and so that's been their rationale, just to add some clarity to that.
Just also wanted to get your thoughts on the announcement last week. CONCACAF and CONMEBOL announced a strategic partnership going forward, and that's going to include having 4 South American teams in the first ever Women's Gold Cup next year. Coming right before the Olympics, are you excited by this additional test and having additional countries and opposition that you're not really that familiar with?
Yeah, I think it's got its pros. I think at the time when we were consulted, my big flag was to have a tournament before a tournament. And so I'm still waiting to see when that fits in a calendar year, because I think, and for me to have 4 different teams that are likely to be, or styles that'll be at Olympics, was a positive. I was worried that, you're taking away some key opportunities to play top 10 opposition right before you go into an Olympics to perform. But I think bringing in, like you say, South American teams, it could be Brazil, Argentina, some teams that we don't get to play very often. I think it has its positives. I think the key for me is when that happens in the year and how close to a major tournament based on the burnout and injuries that we've had.
Thanks, Bev.
Thank you.
Just kind of a quick question on Adriana Leon. Obviously, we have a few forwards that are currently out and are nursing an injury. Has it been kind of frustrating for her not to be on the pitch as often, considering how well she finished off last year?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been in close contact with Adriana even in this window, and you would have seen and heard the rumours. Ultimately, yeah, absolutely. She's a winner. She wants to play. Every player wants to play, and I think you would argue based on her performances, could and possibly should be playing more than what she is. But I think for Adriana, it's about controlling the controllable. That's been my message. And I think, for us, we just got to make sure she's ready for us, because the goal contributions that she gave this team last year, we can't afford for that to sort of go down, and we'll be doing everything remotely to help her and get her firing, and hopefully she gets an opportunity and she'll deliver, because I know that's what she does. But I think it'll bring the best out of her in other ways. I think when she's had knockbacks, you look at her injury just before the Olympics, got injured again, she comes back and she comes back fighting. So when she's given that chance, I've got no doubt she'll deliver. But of course, every player wants to play, and I think, arguably she should be playing more than what she is.